Hello everyone, this is Maxwell Kale here today, and I'm going to be talking about my book, Ode, that I wrote myself and published on Amazon. So if you look up Ode by Maxwell Kale on Amazon, hopefully you can find it. I also have a link above on my Instagram. And I'm going to read the poems today, and I hope you enjoy them. So this is the first part of the video. So Ode. Ode by Maxwell Kale. That's me if you haven't realized it. Here's an ode to you, my friend. An ode to roses. Come sit and be insecure with me. It's a very beautiful thing. If you feel comfortable, take your clothes off. Do you want some tea? Alone, our faces pale. Yet in this act together, all those roses be damned. For this hue so red upon our cheek leaves them envying you and me as men. An ode to new homes. There's no poem for the common man. For such a man walks with moral failure, in the land of men where true morality is anything but common. Yet I, a common man, write this poem for you, and perhaps myself. If you have failed, then so have I, and with our four hands we shall build a home for the common man. An ode to hunger. Oh, illness, you might take my will to eat. Yet in starvation I hunger not for which you give no desire, for I do not desire a thing. I hunger for the ways of showing you I am already full. Not with illness, not with you, but a radiance to preserve that which you can never starve away. And while this body hungers not, I force a will beyond you and find sustenance. An ode to just that. I write myself forgiveness for not living up to the expectations of man thrust upon me, for I am flesh in a world that just is. And when I look at myself, these expectations mean everything I think they are. Yet also when I look at myself, I just in the act of seeing, see, and find solace in just that. An ode to joy. Oh misery, when I looked you in the eye, I saw joy, such muted joy, yet joy nonetheless. And I saw no mirth in that joy, and I saw that joy bound to facts. And this joy held out a hand I could not grasp. For joy may be the prisoner, yet I stare you down as the witness. An ode to the stunned man. I used to think I was worthless, and then I looked at worth, and I saw nothing other than what you've told me, and you've told me a lot. Worth when looked at becomes so overwhelming, a man could fall down stunned, yet the stunned man still lives. An ode to a name. If I were never given a name, would I remain nameless or name myself? Perhaps you would force a name on me, because the freedom of a nameless one would be so threatening. If I had no name to call, would I be tasked to pay attention, and would this answer make you envy me? An ode to cruelty. You told me I was a no one, and in the safety of being a no one, I found myself in multitudes of life without the expectation of being a someone, and in this freedom I've surpassed the gift of your cruelty. An ode to better than. If I'm to be poor, then let me be the poorest of the poor, for the haves will see me as a joke, and while the have-nots too will laugh, they will see me as what every man requires, someone they are better than. And for that I offer myself. An ode to cling to. Between the lack of direction, mental illness, unemployment, the worldwide infection, and those monotonous days, there's you, my friend. And though I cling to you from a distance, I cling nonetheless. For even though these things weigh down upon me as a man, you make me feel the safety of being a child. An ode to the young man that died of COVID. Why does my heart beat even though I will it not? Yet those who willed theirs to beat, even defiantly so, their beat defied them and ceased. Perhaps luck is what keeps such a thing in balance, and my envy of such a thing keeps me beating. An ode to not a bad thing. Be vain, my friend. And in that become so attached to oneself, you have something to cling to, in the storm of life with one hand, while you grasp out to one who cannot be vain, and teach them how the obsession with oneself need not be a bad thing. An ode to sunflowers. If I were a flower, any flower, I would want to be a sunflower. Imagine me there growing tall, basking in the sun, and I could turn and turn again. As a sunflower, I'd have the mane of a lion, and when summer ends, I could stick around to fall in my old age and then never be seen again. An ode to confidence. Confidence, I don't have you. in the classical sense most expect. But I have you in the fact I'm confident I don't have you, and in that I've learned so much. An ode to a haircut. Who knew how much hair grows from the bald skin over a month? It's cathartic to watch January fall onto the ground of February at my monthly appointment. An ode to the stars. If you are not loved, then thank the stars. For to me at least, the thought of love and the desire of said love loves one far more than real love. So if you are unloved, my friend, you know a real love far more than those that are loved. An ode to the sun I'll never have. Son, I can't tell you what a good life is, and I thought I could tell you what a bad life is, but I was a fool. For any life is just a life, and as much as we try and measure it, it remains infinite until it is simply not. So as I speak to you, don't bother listening, for this life of yours is yours to name. An ode to mean. You're mean to me, so I'm mean to you. So you're meaner than me, and I'm meaner to you. Before I saw us reach the meanest, I said, as I turned to you, what's wrong? An ode to enough. Imagine if you never met another man that told you what worth was and what worth was not. If you simply were neither worthy or worthless, as if you walked around with the sense of being adjectives can no longer damn into existence. For you, my man, naked simply walk, and in simply walking are enough. An ode to our arms. Will you cry with me as men, cowering in each other's arms? Can we speak of things we won't even speak to ourselves in times of isolation? Will you look at me as I look at you, as I cry and you cry into our arms? An ode to still. On the day you died, my friend, I knew not a God to curse, for I do not believe in gods. And also I do not believe in curses, but I believe in you. So much so, like those that believe in such things as I do not believe. I believe in you so much, I too talk to you still. An ode to other shadows. In this life of mine, be but shadow to some more important as the sun, then let me flicker not with passion, yet with an urgency so urgent the light of said suns envy me. As my shadow defies the darkness it becomes. An ode to the named. To think if I never had the desire to be secure, you, my friend, in security would simply be as I was prior to being given a name. An ode to stubble. Oh, life, how you never really wanted much of anything other than what I thrust upon you with my silly desires. Like how the stubble on a man's face just grows, and how I find this desirable all on my own. And I, like that stubble on the cheek, just grow until I am shaved off. Oh, life, how you never really wanted anything. An ode to one's upbringing. There's a land where the stubble on our cheeks remain moist in the sun. A place where we as men bear it all without judgment. I saw you as you saw me by that river, where in the splash of the water you showed me your vulnerable side with a sigh. I could tell you stayed bitter in such a land, for you grew up in another. Ode to a community. If you're a boy that loves other boys, and you can stay kind, please still love, I implore you. For most boys have not stayed kind, and they love just the same. And love is a word that shouldn't be cruel, as they've made it oh so cruel. So if you stay kind, I implore you to still love. An ode to nothing. Is being nothing really all that terrible? For my life has come from nothing and shall return to nothing. And so in being nothing interim, such a terrible thing. An ode to comparison. There's this thought of judgment I'm supposed to hold against you, my fellow man, for I must be better than you, as I've been told. Yet why can't I, as a man, exist not in comparison, and why must I compare myself until I have nothing left other than the act of comparison? If there's no such thing as handouts, then bind these two hands of mine as I reach out to you in comparison to those that stand on the backs of comparison. An ode to anything but a man. There's too much competition in being a man that likes other men. So call me anything but a man. For these competitive bones of mine ache at the joints in their desire to like and be liked. Simply call me nothing and let me take all that has been discarded as nothing. For this love is not competitive, for it is kind. An ode to a modern life. Oh, failure, when I stare you in the face, I look past you at a naked me, hunting a wild saber-tooth, fucking in the cold, and falling asleep in a cave, and I laugh at you and pity me. An ode to light. Despair is not the darkness, many have labeled it so. Oh, despair is not a thing that hides in the shadows. It is truly the light one has grown to see that has illuminated the world and shines a spotlight on the smallest crack. An ode to monotony. Do you too ever take walks outside where you know the same road? And I've seen the same sun, and now the fact that such sameness calms you drives you forward. An ode to time. If I were to have a flower, for every time I thought I could walk through my garden forever, this eternal spring I imagine wouldn't haunt me so. An ode to those in the cold. In the eyes of warmth and prosperity, does starvation and damnation to the cold deem us untouchables? Can love reach even us in this abyss, and will it be the ark to our salvation? Do shadows dance behind the windows from where the light emanates inside by the fire, and do they too taunt those that lit it? When my friends fell, was I the fool for not lending out a hand, and was I the jester for letting them fall? Or perhaps, as the warm ones have told me so, I did my best by letting them go. An ode to say, I know this river we can go to as boys, simply being. And we could run in joy and splash and jump and speak of things no man would say. And you, my fellow boy, we can embrace ourselves in a way no man would dare to say.